Ladies and gentlemen, I have an enormous pleasure to invite for opening remarks for this session Mr. Karan Bhatia, who is the Vice President for Government Affairs and Public Policy at Google. Dear Karan, if we can invite you to the stage, please join us.
Good morning, and thank you for this incredible opportunity to be here at the Warsaw Security Forum. I'm particularly pleased to have been asked to share some thoughts on this topic leading into the panel discussion about the role of business in strengthening the resilience of democratic societies. You know, it's a topic that obviously is particularly resonant given the war in Ukraine and the role that private sector companies can play and are playing in strengthening Ukraine's resilience in sectors ranging from defense to agriculture to technology. But while Ukraine is rightfully top of mind, the question of what role business should play in strengthening democracy really isn't just limited to one country. It's a topic that's relevant to many countries, some where democracy is deeply seated and robust, and others where it's much more nascent and more fragile. It's a topic that I've given a lot of thought to over the course of my 30 years working with a variety of businesses operating globally as a lawyer, then in the US government as a trade negotiator, and then at two major American headquartered companies, General Electric, and for the past 4 years, Google, where I lead the company's government affairs and public policy team globally. My thesis to you today is that business has a fundamental and profound role to play in strengthening the resilience of democratic societies, perhaps as much or more so as any other major societal institution, academia, religious institutions, the military, or even government. But to be sustainable, the role of business in supporting democratic resilience doesn't reside in philanthropy, nor as an arm of any government's foreign policy. Rather, private sector companies contribute most when they're able to do what they do best: innovate and bring much needed goods and services to markets, invest in their employees and communities, and work to achieve their missions. In short, I believe that companies contribute to the resilience of democratic society when they focus on the 3 Ps: products, people, and principles. I want to share a few thoughts using the example of Ukraine on each of these 3. I will say that the war in Ukraine for us at Google has really been an all-of-company, top-down priority since the war began earlier this year. So let me start with the most straightforward and probably obvious way that companies contribute. They help strengthen resilience, and that's by bringing their products to market. Good products make societies more productive, they make economies stronger, and they help people live their lives better. I certainly felt this when the company I used to work for created machinery that generated electricity, transported people, or diagnosed and helped heal sick people. But I feel it even more so in the case, frankly, of Google, where the products we bring to market have a special resonance to democracy. Products like Gmail and Android help people connect. YouTube and Google for Education help students learn. Google Maps help people move around. Ads enable small business to operate, and Google Search supplies people with authoritative information to help better live their lives. Of course, it is critically important that these products be responsible, that they protect people's safety and security. In the context of Ukraine, we've taken those responsibilities very seriously. First, we sought in a time of crisis to provide good, desperately needed information into the country. Working with government authorities, we rapidly created new information products, new tools to allow Ukrainians looking for trustworthy, authoritative information about the war, about refugee resources, about routes to be able to escape, and enable them to access such information easily on the web. We've also created new technology, for example, to transmit air raid alerts to people's mobile phones in advance of hearing the siren, often giving them precious additional minutes to seek shelter. As importantly as getting good information out there, we have focused on combating disinformation. In an unprecedented step for us and going beyond what any sanctions required, we took down all Russian state-sponsored media off our platforms globally. We shut down our ads business in and to Russia because we were concerned about advertising being a possible vector for disinformation. And we've removed hundreds of YouTube channels and thousands of videos that promoted disinformation about the war. And we have deployed our products to combat growing cybersecurity risks. Google is the world's most attacked website in the world. We have had to become best in class at security to protect our own online presence. And recently we have extended that protective umbrella to Ukraine's ministries and institutions. I can tell you from a personal perspective, it's been inspirational watching our company, like many others, spring into action following the invasion earlier this year, working 24/7 to build and evolve products to meet this extraordinary challenge and protect users. And we were so gratified when President Zelensky recognized Google with the first Ukrainian Peace Prize award granted to any private sector company. So that's products. The second area of focus I would suggest is people, employees and communities. Companies strengthen resilience when they invest in people, specifically employees and the communities they live in. Democracies thrive when people have good, fulfilling jobs and healthy, prosperous communities. For many companies, including Google, that of course has meant continuing to invest in the people of Ukraine. In Ukraine, and as people have been forced to flee as they move to neighboring countries. In our case, we've continued to maintain our presence in the country itself, but we have also grown our activities in neighboring countries. We have been inspired by the support that the Polish people, including many Google employees in Poland, have shown in helping refugees fleeing the war. And we felt moved to act as a company and have contributed more than $45 million in humanitarian relief. Everything from Chromebooks for kids to money to help displaced people build new lives. But perhaps as important, we've continued to demonstrate confidence in the region by continuing to invest here. Just weeks after Russian tanks rolled across the border and with the world very jittery about what would transpire in the Central and Eastern European region, we decided to expand our presence with a significant $700 million real estate investment here in Warsaw. And contrary to what some had urged, lest we make ourselves a target, we didn't do that quietly because we knew the world would be watching. And an investment of $750 million by Google would send the message that we wanted to be heard, that the global business community was not going to be intimidated, that we would continue to invest in this important region. Lastly, businesses support democratic resilience by being true to their principles, by how they do business, by setting a model of transparency and responsibility and integrity for the countries in which they operate, and by being true to their commitments and their mission. At Google, our mission is to organize the world's information and to make it universally accessible and useful. It is giving people access to information, which is fundamentally, we think, a democratic mission. It empowers people. It invests them with dignity. And it is no surprise as a result that when democracy is threatened, one of the first actions one often sees is shutting down the internet. Authoritarianism doesn't sit easily with the free flow of information. We just saw this in Iran in response to protests against the regime. And there, as with Ukraine, Google has taken action to try to afford Iranian citizens ongoing access to accurate information through virtual VPN services. It bears noting, though, that access to information globally has never been more under threat than it is today. Around the world, we see an explosion of regulations and government actions that seek to limit what content internet platforms can surface, often under the threat of enormous fines or even criminal liability to our employees. We see these threats not just in classic authoritarian regimes, but even in countries that would sometimes normally deem democracies. And this is where I believe democratic governments do have a responsibility to help business They, and in particular, Europe and the United States, need to come together. They need to align on forcibly defending companies from these threats, and they need to ensure that their own actions aren't inadvertently used to justify or facilitate anti-democratic action. So let me just close by recapping my thesis. Businesses have a profoundly important role to play in strengthening the resilience of democracies, and they can best do so by focusing on what they do best, on creating great products, on investing in people, and on remaining true to their principles. Thank you very much.